Are you trying to differentiate between regenerative and sustainable farming so you can make better food choices? These two terms are battling it out for which is better. However, practical application says that the differences between these two are likely less than you're led to believe. You won't go wrong with regenerative or sustainable food choices. While the end result of your choice will likely be the same, there are differences that you as the consumer should be aware of. But before we talk about that, allow me to introduce myself. I'm Arlen Hill. I'm a regenerative rancher that helps those seeking to use food to improve their health make the choices they really seek. When it comes to regenerative and sustainable farming, there are two notable differences that you as a conscious consumer need to be aware of. The first is related to the agriculture system or the state of that agriculture system. Under the context of sustainable, this is often looked at as maintaining an optimal agriculture state. You've helped that agriculture environment reach an optimal level, and now you're trying to sustain and keep it at that optimal level, and the various factors that work within it are trying to be maintained as optimal too. The animals, the land, the people, the community, all these various factors are trying to be sustained at a consistently optimal level. Regenerative, on the other hand, is looking at taking a degraded state and improving it. As the name implies, you're regenerating it. You're trying to bring it back to that state of optimal and keep the improvements moving forward over time. So that's the first notable difference there. The second is what these two farming models focus on. Sustainable has three general goals that it focuses on. It looks at profits over the long term, it looks at stewardship, and it looks at quality of life. Profits over the long term is simply meaning that for the individuals that are the producers, that they can make a quality living and support their family and have a livelihood that they can depend on for an extended year over year, decade over decade. They're stewards. They're trying to give back to the land and be respectful of what the land gives them, have that commensurate relationship, and they have an appreciation for a quality of life. Quality of life for the animals, quality of life for the people that are working it. And that's the focus for sustainable. The focus for regenerative is predominantly in soil health. Now, it doesn't mean that it doesn't focus in other areas, but in most readings, that's where you're going to find regenerative focused at, is in the conversation around soil. Now, I want to also acknowledge that these two systems do overlap. They don't actually overlap just a little bit, they overlap a lot. And so when it comes to conversations like climate resiliency, soil health, as I alluded to, the health of livestock and husbandry, so how individuals are interacting with those animals, overall human health and how that affects the community locally, but also on a larger scale, and then even biological diversity. These are all shared mindsets between both sustainable and regenerative. So for you as the consumer, what's the final word on this? Should you be looking at regenerative or should you be looking for sustainable? Well, first, let's acknowledge that you as the conscious consumer have to first do your part, which means that you should buy local. You should support the farms around you that are driving either one of these models of farming. Both are going to be beneficial. If you have a preference towards regenerative or have a preference towards sustainable, then ask questions about the farm practices so you can appreciate maybe what the differences are, and if there's something that farm is doing unique that maybe you like or even maybe you don't like. You have to interact with the producer. There's a lot of overlap, remember here, and when we're talking about using food to support your health, which is what I'm a big advocate of, you want to look at how are those practices being used to increase nutrient density. Sustainable farming can do that. Regenerative farming can do that. And just for as you're looking, and maybe when you don't have the opportunity to buy locally, or for some reason you don't do that on a particular instance, understand that when you're looking on labels, that when it comes to sustainable and regenerative, the labels that you'll find are non-governmental agencies or non-governmental organizations that are behind putting these labels on food. So let me contrast this for you for a minute. When you look at the USDA, you're familiar with USDA, a government agency, organic. So USDA organic. But when you see things for sustainable, the label that I've been able to find that's linked to sustainable is the Food Alliance certified label. When it comes to regenerative, A Greener World is the organization that's doing the best work in terms of certifying for regenerative. So I'm going to put information down in the description, so links to these if you want to dig into more details so you can see more about the particular labels and what makes up sustainable and regenerative at a much deeper level. But I recognize that you may also be asking, well, where does organic fit into this conversation? I mentioned the USDA organic. Well, I'm glad you asked, because here's a video that's going to answer that exact question for you.